Well, hello there, it's Beards and Bangers, and today we're going to do some work on Penny, the Rover Streetwise. Bad shot.
Welcome to Beards and Bangers.
So what we're doing in particular today is we're going to look at these front wings. So obviously we've got this dent here, which we said we were going to repair. So that's the near side wing. The offside wing, we've got a little bit of rust bubbling up down here, so we need to crack on with that. Also need to repair this little bit of rust here, which we'll do when we're doing this wing here. But a couple of very kind people, Pingu Concord and Dan Hooper, managed to point out something to me, so I will show you that in just a sec. So on Facebook Marketplace about a month ago, these OEM brand new wings came up for sale. They're still wrapped up. Keep them wrapped up until we get them in my shed. So I'm actually today's video is mainly about taking you through getting these prepared to go on this car. So we're going to be priming them or cleaning them firstly, make sure they're nice and clean. We're going to use etch primer. We're going to spray with some Goodwood green paint that I've had made up, and we're also going to clear coat them as well. And then this is almost a two-part video, so that's part one. Part two, another day, will be actually putting them on the car and waxing, cavity waxing all the bits that we want to protect for the future. So we're not just improving the look of the car, we're also future-proofing as well. Because I've got a bit of a soft spot for this car now. I'm doing various bits and bobs to it, hopefully on a budget. And it'd be a real shame to go through all that work and effort and for the car to end up rotting. So really want to look after Penny. Of course, 2024, year of the Streetwise, loads of events next year. Shout out to 120 years of Rover Story and 100 years of MG. So the MG Car Club are putting together some events next year. 2024, year of the Streetwise, a group that I'm involved in with Matt, Pingu and Simon. We're part of that as well, so massive shout out to that. I must apologise also for the lack of content recently. I've had sinusitis, so I don't really feel like talking that much because I'm coffee, bunged up, sound really nasal, but today I'm just going to get on with it. What's a better way of clearing your nostrils than getting on with some spray painting safely? So we're inside the Beards and Bangers shed. I've actually already done one wing because I just wanted to try things out before I started filming stuff. So that's why there's paint on the plywood. You're probably thinking, oh god, he's ruined his shed. Well, A, it's a shed, and B, I'm actually going to reline this back wall of this because the ply is too thin. And part of the reason having ply on the walls of the shed is like a racking board. So yeah, so the wings, this is the wing. They come with this bubble wrap sellotape to them. Obviously the sellotape's been on there a long time, probably 20-ish years. So the glue really has bonded to this primer. So there's this kind of black primer on here. You'll notice I've already sanded back some of the wings. I'm just scratching it up just so the etch primer can really bond in. Yeah, so I'm using this etch primer. What that does, that sort of cuts into the surface and means that when we actually spray our colour on, you can see the Goodwood green or aquamarine paint. It's got two different names, this colour. It's yeah, Goodwood green is what the Streetwises were called. But if we look at the don't know how well you can see that. If we look at the paint code from the database, it comes up as aquamarine, which I think the MG TFs came in. So now the reason I'm paying real attention to removing the sellotape residue is because it will, the substrate's got to be absolutely spot on. It's got to be completely clean. So at every stage we use, I'm going to try and lift this up without spilling it, but we've got this panel wipe, so it's like a solventy degreasery type thing that just cleans the surface as we go along. So we don't spray until we've panel wiped. Now the only time I don't use panel wipe is when I'm clear coating or lacquering at the end, because you actually you spray that so you spray a coat of lacquer, and you'll see this later on in the video, and you spray the next coat while it's still tacky, and that helps you build up the real nice glossiness on the paintwork. But the sellotape residue's got to go. So on the first wing I must have left a little bit of sellotape residue, probably in this area of the front wing, and it just reacted. So the primer went on okay, but then when the coloured coat went on, it reacted, and I had to sand the whole thing off. So I had to sand it back to bare metal and start again. So that was bit of time wasted, but that's why I did it like that way round. So rather than filming that and filming it going wrong, I wanted to get it right, because hopefully some of you are going to find this useful about spraying panels at home. But we can see here we've got some kind of little blemish on the panel there, so make sure we really clean that off. There's something there. You'll see I've got a green rag up here. Now that's absolutely soaked in thinners, so the sellotape residue is so baked onto these panels that I'm having to use cellulose thinners, which is making me quite high, I have to say. But it seems to be the only thing that's really getting the residue off. So I don't know if we can see in there. It's yeah, it seems to have melted it. So yeah, the thinners seem to be better for melting the sellotape residue than the actual panel wipe. But yeah, just make sure your panel's really clean if it is new. Obviously, if it's not new, then you're going to need to scratch it back. So if you've got a panel that's got lacquer peel or a panel that's got lacquer on it, you can't just go spraying it, because the paint's just going to not bond. So you've got to scratch it back and then use your etch primer, or if it's really scratched or really lumpy bumpy, something like filler primer or high build primer, just to give you a slightly better surface. But yeah, I'm using etch because this is a brand new panel in good condition. The first panel I will show you at the end of the video, that's actually turned out really well, apart from a little run on the clear coat, but we'll deal with that once it's fully hardened off. And I'll probably show you that in another video, because it's easily dealt with. So yeah, so that's what we're doing first. So we're cleaning the panel off. I'm going to do that off camera, and then what we'll do is we'll spin this wing round. You'll see I've got it on bits of string at the moment. I've also got these screws that are going to hang. We can hang the wing off as well. So we're getting the paint. Obviously, we can't spray like this because we're going to have a line where the string is. But this is really just to keep it off the ground while I get the sellotapey bits off. There's a few bits of sellotape on the back side as well. So I'm going to go ahead, get this wing cleaned off with sellotape, and then I'll show you just roughing it up with some sandpaper, some very fine sandpaper, just to give us a bit of a surface to etch primer onto. Because obviously there is primer on here already, so we need to just scratch it back a bit, but keep it smooth, and then we'll etch prime it. The next stage after that is the actual colour coat, and we'll show you how I build that up in stages. It's not just a question of drenching it with paint and then thinking it's done. It's a very slow, methodical process. Very difficult for someone like me who's reasonably impatient with things like this. And then the final stage is clear coat. And then once the wings are on the car and are kind of a bit more, they're actually quite flexible, these wings. So we won't correct the runs and the little nibs in the lacquer until it's actually on the car, because that will give us a bit of strength and rigidity to use a machine polisher and bits and bobs like that. So I'll go ahead, get this wing cleaned up right now, and then we'll start sanding it back. Just got my head torch on. Now, before anyone says, oh, you can't spray paint in a shed because it's too cold, this shed is actually fully insulated and has heating, so it's actually quite pleasant in here. It's minus something outside. I'm actually sitting here in just a thin jumper. I can actually just take the jumper off. Actually, it's quite pleasant. So it's a nice environment. Now, we're not going to start spraying yet, but when we do come to spray painting indoors safely is really important. So I'll be wearing a respirator, not just not one of the COVID masks we used to wear. That's not going to cut it. The solvents will get to your nostrils, but if we use a respirator, the filters in those are great enough to get most of the nasty out. So very, very important before we say anything else. So on this wing, I've taken all the sellotape off. It's it took a bit of doing. It's quite hard work. I haven't shown you that because it's just a lot of swearing basically and me being very grumpy. But what we're going to do is get some 800 grit sandpaper and I've done this on the other side already. So we're just going to make sure you can see that. We're just going to lightly sand this primer back, and what that does is it just allows the etch to get into the substrate nicely. And I tried this on the other one, and so I didn't do this on the other one, and I had the reaction for one, and then secondly, when I sanded it right back, I got a much better finish. So that's why I'm just going to scratch this up. I'm not trying to get it back to bare metal, or it has gone back to bare metal in a couple of places on the other side of the wing. That's probably where, you know, this has been done in the factory, and it's been done, you know, bit of a thin area. So what we'll get this all sanded back. Obviously we've got to make sure we look after these areas as well. So we've got this return edge here. It's not just a question of spraying the bit that looks nice. We've got to spray inside and out, because, you know, Rovers being Rovers, we've got what have we got? We've got, you know, we've got trims that sits about here, and we get a dirt trap here. On this other end of the wing, we've got the we've got the arch liner here around this slip, so that's another dirt trap. And on the end of the wing, we've got a bit of a dirt trap where the Streetwise plastic bumper comes up. So it's really important that we treat both sides of the wing. So I'm now going to put you on time lapse while I sand this back. So the very eagle-eyed amongst you will have seen that I stopped here with the green cloth, because when I was sanding it showed some sellotape residue, so just a bit of thinners on that cloth, and that's now gone. That's now nice and clean. You'll also notice that I got my thumb and started just picking here, because there's some kind of, I don't know whether it's a run where the paint's kind of settled in this area when it's been sprayed, whether it's some kind of silicone, but I've just prized that off and sanded it back, because anything like silicone, it makes quite a nice echoey noise when I do that. Let's turn that off, because I think it's run out of battery anyway. Silicone paint will not stick to silicone, so it's really important, if there's any silicone anywhere near it, you've got to wipe it off. So we'll make sure that when we panel wipe before we primer, that's really probably take it off the string actually and just get it on a flat surface and just really sand that back a bit further. I've gone back to bare metal in places because I've got to, because you can't paint on stuff like that, and if it's a run it's going to have too much of a build up. And obviously this panel here sits on top of the inner wing in the engine bay, so it is visible, so we do want this bit here to look nice. So next up, I'll get these bits done off camera, and then we will etch primer after panel wiping first, of course. Right, so panel sanded, we're now ready to prime it. We're going to use etch prime. I'm going to start with the back, so I'm going to prime all parts of the panel first, and then we'll do the colour coat, and then finally the clear coat. Obviously we don't need to do a clear coat on the back, that just needs a good priming. And one thing we've got to really do is pay attention to the edges. Now what I'm using before I do any painting is I'm just going to rub the panel with panel wipe as best as possible, and that just makes sure there's no grease on there. I will have to touch the panel at some point to deal with this bit up here. Don't know how well you can see that. I've got as much light in the shed as possible. Obviously this time of year it's not the best in terms of daylight, which one does one's best. But because I have sanded this panel, I'm going to actually tack cloth it after I've used the panel wipe, just to make sure we get all detritus off. Because one thing we don't want to do is have to start all over again and have a reaction. I will do a fail video at some point with this, but I'd rather it go well. One thing I do is check the cloth. You can see there's actually still a bit of, don't know how well you can see that if I stand in front of it. There's a little bit of dust still on that cloth, so we'll give it another go with the panel wipe. And if you do this, if you take a bit of time doing this, then it does make life a lot easier when you come to do the next step, which is the fun bit, getting the colour on it. So we're going to do as much as we can. And then, yeah, we'll take you through all the next 3 stages, and then we'll have part 2 of the video, which will be the clear coat going on. Make sure we get into all these little corners as well. And that's coming up clean now, so that's good news. Make sure we get under there, because we're going to be spraying there as well. And I've just handled it, which I didn't want to do, so get rid of the tack cloth. Now we'll get a panel wipe, sorry, a tack cloth. And this will do the whole wing, so we'll use it on the. I'm only going to tack cloth at this stage because it's only this real dusty bit where I have sanded back. I want to make sure I'm getting rid of the debris. So just open it up just to get a bit of air into it, and then we'll just make sure we wipe all surfaces. We'll start off with these folded bits because that's where the dust will get trapped. And then we'll do the rest of the panel. And this will just lift off anything that was stubborn. And that's now ready for etch. So that we'll put that safely to one side, because we are going to use that on the other side of the panel in a moment. We shall grab our etch primer, and I will pause because I'm going to grab my respirator because I forgot to put that on. Right, so I'm going to resist doing a Darth Vader impression. I couldn't resist. Right, there we are. So I've got the door of the shed open as well, so I've got some ventilation. So hopefully you can hear me all right. What I'm going to start off with is all these edgy bits, because they're the important bits. We need to make sure we get a good covering of that. Give it a bit of a shake. Glasses and respirators don't go together well. So I will do my, actually I'll take my glasses off, so I don't actually need them because I'm working up close. I can actually see better without them. So hopefully you can see all of this. Okay, right, here we go. And I'm just putting a light coating on. I'm not going to go mad. We'll give it another coat in a sec. What I'll do the second and third coats on time lapse, so it's not too boring for you. Under here as well. Right, so that's all the edges done. Now we'll just mist on the rest of the panel. We'll do this top when we do the other side, because we want a good finish on that, because that is visible. On the car, I will do this edge here.
Okay, so we'll give that 10 minutes and then we'll do another coat and maybe one more coat after that, and then we'll be ready for the colour.
Right, so here's the second and maybe third coat on time lapse, front of the panel on time lapse. Between doing the front and the back, I'll cut this string and then we'll hook it on these two screws, just so we haven't got the string in the way, blocking the path of the paint. We can get that back. Got a couple of runs there with the primer, not too worried about that. On the back of the panel. Oh, that's my alarm going off. Tell me 8 minutes is nearly up. Not going to tack cloth it because it's only been a couple of minutes and it's in a pretty clean environment. So we'll get this done, then we can start with the colour coat in a little while. So that's the priming done, so we'll just let that go off now for about 45 minutes so it's properly dry, and then the next step is just to make sure there's no runs on it, flat it back, and then we'll flip the panel around again and we'll start on the actual colour coat on the rear. That's quite easy because it's just literally a colour coat, no lacquer. Flip the panel around, do again. You'll notice I got some masking tape just to get a couple of I think some hair came off my jumper while I was spraying, so there's a couple of bits of hair in the primer which we got out. We don't want that in there because that's going to cause problems. So mine is flat it back with some 1200 grit in a minute just to see, make sure there's nothing, no little nibs or runs in there, and then we can do the colour. Right, so the panel's been flipped round again, just very carefully so it's not rubbing the primer that's on the fair face of the panel. Next job is to start building some colour in here. We don't need to be quite so precious, but I will have a little bit of blue roll with me. I'll do this one on slow speed so you can see it, but then we'll do the rest of the colour on both sides, and we'll finish up with the final coat on the front of the panel in a sec. Important though, just make sure you panel wipe this because obviously it's been sitting now for a little while, so it might have picked up some dust. So do panel wipe it, tack cloth it, and then we can begin to paint.
Right, there we go, good old shake of the can. Just grab a little bit of blue roll just to dab the nozzle. Hopefully you can hear me through this Darth Vader mask. Yeah, if you just dab the, try and show it up close, if you just dab the excess paint off there as you're going, it just stops the nozzle spitting, which you don't want it to do. So I'm going to start firing. You might not be able to see all of this because I started this far end over here. And again, I'm starting with the edges, just building it up, dab. It might look a bit stripy, but don't forget we're going to build this up really gradually. We're not trying to flood it with paint on the first pass. We're just trying to get some colour on. I probably just need to be a bit more consistent with my, can you see I've got sort of thick bit there, and then it's a bit mistier there, so I probably just need to be a bit more, take my time a little more rather than snatching at it, which I've got a habit of doing. So it doesn't matter so much on this side because you can't see it. As long as it is completely sealed with primer and paint, then it's going to have rust protection. Make sure we get up here as well. And we can start just filling in these gaps. Okay, so that's the first coat done. So we'll give this about 8 minutes to go off, then we'll give it another coat. Make sure we keep dabbing the end of the nozzle just to keep it clear. We'll do that on time lapse as well because I quite like doing that. And then we'll go back onto normal speed once we do the final coat of paint on the actual fair face of the panel, and then we can clear coat. Right, so that's 2 coats of the colour on. We're going to do one more. I think that's going to be enough. I'm just going to use my use my torch as I go round. That just really helps identify areas that are missed. There's a bit thin up there, so maybe we'll need a 4th coat, which I'll do off camera, and then we'll get on with the lacquering. So mask on, glasses off first. Now I don't panel wipe between each coat here because I'm only leaving it for 8 minutes, and I want to spray on tacky paint because that helps get a good finish and helps get that build up. So with this 3rd coat we can go a little bit heavier. I'll just check round the edges first. Obviously these are bits that are hidden, and we need to make sure they're well covered, because they're going to be hard to see any rust, so we need to make sure they're well protected. Excuse me if you can't hear me very well, but I've got to wear this mask. Yeah, so make sure you're very careful with the panel edges, and make sure we get this nice in here as well, because that's going to be presented when you open the engine bay. Okay, so what I'll do, I'll work in little quadrants, and I'm going to go a bit heavier. Like so. It would help if I put my glasses on. And I'll grab the flashlight at the same time. Just dab my nozzle so it doesn't get clogged up. And it's a really good mix, this paint, because it's like pearlescence in the aquamarine or goodwood green, call it what you will. Let's have a little look. A bit light there, with a very light misting over that bit. And that looks pretty good to me. I think that will... I'll stand back so you get to see it as well, and I can see it from a distance. Yeah, a bit of a run there, which we'll deal with in a sec. Don't panic with runs, because sometimes it looks like the paint's run, but when it actually fully dries, it's actually all right. Bit like there, bit like there. Obviously I'm not a professional sprayer, so this isn't ideal. I'm in quite a fairly dark shed. There is lighting, I've got power and heating and lighting in here, but it's not the best light. So yeah, if you can do this in brighter light in a bigger area, it is obviously a lot better. Yeah, that's the colour's really good. I'm quite pleased with that. And do remember, on a Streetwise, I mean obviously not all of your driving Streetwises, but you've got the plastic trim round there, so it's very important. You know, this still needs to be good because it's got to protect it from rust. That's a potential rust trap, that little spot there. So okay, we'll give this another 8 minutes and just give it one last inspection and see what it looks like, and then hopefully we'll be ready for the clear coat. Right, so final step folks, we're going to put the lacquer on, or clear coat, or call it what you will. Probably do 3, maybe 4 coats. So same principle as before. We just do a light misting and build it up gradually, and then with lacquer, with the final coat, we tend to soak it on a bit more. So what I'll do is I won't do any more time lapse because you've probably had enough of that already. But we shall give the panel a quick wipe. Now what you haven't seen off camera is that I had to flat back a couple of runs, and then I've just sprayed a bit more colour paint over. So it looks, the colour paint looks quite dull. At this stage, but once we get the lacquer on, it will start to shine up. So mask on. Lacquer is nasty stuff, so make sure you're ventilated, which I am, and you're wearing a mask. Right, here's our lacquer. Quick test spray, and we'll start with the edges again, and then we'll work around the panel. And we'll leave 8 minutes between coats. The reason for that is so it stays fairly tacky, so each coat sits to the each coat sticks, sorry, to the last. Right, I'm going to get my torch. I've now done the edges. I'll grab my torch just so I can see where I'm spraying. Okay, so 8-minute timer, and I won't show you the next 2 coats. I'll show you the final coat though, and hopefully try and get the camera up close so you can see me really flooding it on. So I'm actually going to do the final coat outside with a mask on still, because I'm getting a bit fumigated. So we're going to go quite heavy now, so I'll show you that. And if aerosols run out, just grab another tin of lacquer, which I have shaken already. Give it another quick shake. Yeah, so lacquer really is the strongest of the paints. So please do be very careful. Now if this does run, we can deal with this quite straightforwardly. But it's so much easier doing it outside with the natural light. You can deal with the runs after just with some probably 1200 grit paper. Let's do this top again as well. I'll go round for that. So we don't need lacquer on the back of the panel, but we'll just do a bit on that edge there, just to give it a bit more sealing, and then we'll just do this bit here. And there we are, so I'll show you a finished panel in just a sec. So the light's going a bit, but we can see the final result here. So this is the first panel I did. Yeah, a couple of nibs in it, but we'll get that out when we actually mount it on the car, because that'll give us the chance to it'll have a bit of tension on it, so it'll be a bit more solid to flat back a little bit with some very, very fine, I'm talking sort of wet sanding at 2000 grit. Then we'll buff it with compound and polish, and then it really should shine. But it's a lovely colour, this Goodwood green. Yeah, and that 2000 grit will, sorry, excuse the boiler making fluff there, making steam there. Yeah, there's a bit of dust on the panel already, because this one's been stored in the house now that it's sprayed up. But I'm actually, for my first attempt at spraying panels, I'm actually pretty proud of myself, because I think that's turned out quite nicely. Obviously you'll see the full result when we fit them to the car, and hopefully it'll be a better daylight, so you can see the effects a lot better. I'll spin you around. So thank you very much for watching part 1 of sorting Penny's front wings out, painting. If you're painting any panels for any cars, you can follow these steps. Obviously this time of year in England, coming into December, it's not the easiest time to paint outside. I'm lucky I've got a shed that I can do what I want in, and it is heated, so it does make life a little bit easier in terms of cleanliness and warmth of painting panels. But do give it a go yourself. Hopefully you found this interesting. If you have, please hit the subscribe button. Don't forget to like, please share, and I'll see you again when we fit in this series when we fit the wings, but probably in another episode of something else fairly soon. Thank you for watching Beards and Bangers. Goodbye.